A year ago, Australia voted no to the Voice, another terrible Albanese government idea. Labor's plan for a kind of Aboriginal-only advisory parliament. But the government still has an ambassador just for Aborigines, an ambassador for First Nations people, who's now helping the Department of Foreign Affairs to organise meetings with Aborigines to work on, and I quote, the development of a strategy to embed First Nations approaches to foreign policy. Joining me is Rowan Dean, Editor-in-Chief of The Spectator Australia, and host of Outsiders on Sky News every Sunday at 9 a.m. Rowan, can you please tell me what First Nation approaches to foreign policy are? Because I didn't know that Aboriginal tribes before colonisation actually had a foreign policy, but clearly I'm ill-informed.
Well, I'm sure there must be somewhere or other a book by, if not Bruce Pascoe, someone of a similar persuasion, detailing the embassies that dotted the various First Nations around this glorious continent of ours. And you can imagine the descriptions of the ambassadorial digs and all the beautiful banquets and so on. But on a serious note, the role of the ambassador is to represent the entire nation. That's it, full stop. That's what an ambassador does. It's the personification of the nation. That's why I have things like diplomatic immunity and so on, because you're not there as an individual. You're not even representing a group of people. You are the representation of the diplomatic interests of that nation, military interests, trade interests, defense interests, security interests, and so on. And that's it. That's your role. So to suddenly put a First Nations ambassador up wandering around the country, this bloke's got 350 grand to go and presumably get up the pointy end of the plane and travel to all sorts of other First Nations around the world. We are handing out, or what the Albanese government is literally handing our sovereignty away, for the simple reason that this bloke, unless it's purely ceremonial, which it isn't, waving gum leaves around and smoking ceremonies and so on, but this bloke must have some kind of authority as an ambassador. That means he can enter directly into negotiations and treaties, more importantly, with other First Nations groups around the world. So, for example, and this is, speculation, obviously, hypothetically, he could say, well, to the First Nations people of Peru, you can come to Australia and you have access to Uluru where the Australian people don't have access to Uluru. Or hypothetically, as the First Nations ambassador, I allow you to come here and go to these areas, these beaches and so on, which belong to us under native title, which non-Indigenous Australians are not allowed to go on to. And you have the right to come there. You could even have the First Nations ambassador theoretically offering for people to come from other First Nations and automatically have citizenship if he deemed that to be the case, because that is what an ambassador has, the power to represent the entire nation. So we are literally throwing away sovereignty like this. We have seen in the past how treaties have been used, United Nations treaties, human rights treaties, environmental treaties, all sorts of treaties become law for the simple reason that the High Court judges will say, well, it may not be the law of the land, but we've signed this treaty. Therefore, we are obliged to follow the terms of the treaty. So this First Nations ambassador can basically, as an ambassador, sign whatever treaties he feels like on behalf of the First Nations of Australia. Where does that leave the rest of Australia?
I'm not sure it's going to have that power, but
theoretically,
I'm sure he won't have that power.